Hello there, and welcome back to the channel. Sorry for the whole live action flashbang, but I'm on vacation, so some of the audio and visuals are probably not going to be too great here. But I really wanted to talk about the situation because I've been talking about Supergirl for like the past year now, and this character cannot catch a break. I mean, her reputation is cooked, bro. This is like her one chance to really like come back into the main fold and to like prove like her worth as a character. But with each passing day, it's just like her character's cooked. So obviously, the box office situation with Supergirl was already pretty trash. It's like one of the worst performing movies of this year. It's not even gonna break even. That's how poor the marketing was. That's how lackluster the word of mouth for the movie was. But Supergirl is now getting some more backlash over the alleged use of AI in during the concept development for the film. This was because of a behind the scenes video that Warner Bros. Posted, and you can see that there's Lobo. They're going through like different like looks, I guess, for Lobo, and this is where allegedly the AI was used. Now I use the term allegedly because this isn't like confirmed to be AI or anything. Also, the video was like deleted, so it's hard to kind of go back and like actually fact check, but given the fact that the video was deleted in the first place, it's kind of already like a sign that this probably was AI. And if you look, if you look at the images here for Lobo, to be honest, they kind of just look AI. I mean, let's be real. There's a certain look AI has, and this just kind of fits that vibe. Also, there's the tab that they have open here for Lobo is just it looks like somebody prompted like, hey, put Lobo in a bar, and it just generated a whole bunch of different versions. Now, I'm not a concept artist. I have never worked like officially in the industry or anything, so maybe this is like a normal process where you kind of have these different images of kind of the same scene, and you're kind of going back and forth to see like which version looks better. So I suppose that's possible, and I suppose it's possible that a real artist made all this, but it just kind of seems off. So it's possible that this was done by a real artist, or this is like the actual process of concept design, but the damage is already done. I mean, everyone basically has already said this is AI. Um, the reputation is done, like it's over. Again, it doesn't really matter what the facts are in the case because everyone's calling it AI, and that's probably because it feels like AI. Like the movie as a whole, to be honest, like parts of it just feel kind of lazy. Now, I gave it a somewhat positive review of like 7 out of 10. Right, that's probably like one of the more positive reviews of the film. But most people have kind of said it's either mid or just straight up trash. And so, when the allegations of AI come into play, people are like, oh, I can see how that would be AI because the rest of the film kind of demonstrates that. Most critical, for example, brought up the whole like needle drop that was used at the end of the movie, and yeah, I agree with him. It might genuinely be one of the worst needle drops in cinema history. It's that garbage, and so it's just like I don't really understand like what DC is doing. You've seen all these memes of Spider-Man Brand New Day is gonna make sorry, $2 billion this weekend as of posting this video, and you know DC is like the Condiment King TV show is gonna get released before like Wonder Woman. And it's just like it's silly. So it's just such a weird state that we're in with DC. And this is not to say that I think Marvel is back or anything, because at the end of the day, Spider Man Brand New Day is a Sony production. Like, yes, it's in collaboration with, Disney and the MCU and all, but at the very end of the day, it is still a Sony production. And so, I don't necessarily think like Marvel is back or anything. I certainly don't think Doomsday looks, much good. The second trailer just dropped and it's kind of just, ooh, do you have good writing? No, but we got ore farming and hype moments. Like that's genuinely what the trailer looks like to me. But that's we're getting off topic here. We're getting off topic. Uh, as it comes to this whole like AI and concept development like stage, I do admittedly have like some mixed feelings about it. Now, before you call me a clanker or anything like, or an AI bro, just hear me out here. Hear me out. So, I went to school for animation, and one of the final classes in my time there was, concept art, right? And so this was like 2023. So this was about the time generative AI was really starting to come into the fold here. And so this is kind of before everyone knew like the problems with AI, like especially in art. And so, one of the teachers was like, "Hey, we're one of the first classes to have access to this generative AI, so let's kind of use it in our course." And everyone's like, "Okay, that's kind of cool. We're seeing a new technology unfold here." And so, basically, kind of the purpose of the class was to use the AI, specifically Midjourney, to use Midjourney as kind of concept art for your concept art, if that makes sense. So you would type into Midjourney, okay, for example, give me like a Western version of Cuphead, for example, right? And so it would kind of give you like these different ideas or whatever, and then you would based off of that, you would kind of make your art from. So I don't have like the original prompts or anything or the original images, but here is kind of like my art kind of based on those prompts or those images. This is not AI generated. This is like kind of taking, I guess, quote unquote inspiration from the images. And so, kind of looking back on it, it's like, kind of problem A, of course, is that you're still like stealing art, right? Like this whole generative AI trash is like stealing artists' work. So, obviously that's a big no no. But I can kind of see like why certain concept artists, like why it could be useful in certain cases where it's like, okay, like, you kind of have like, you kind of have a, like writer's block, if you will, like for artists. I don't know what that's called, like artist block, maybe. I don't know, but basically, you have like writer's block, in terms of like whatever design you're making, and so maybe someone's like, oh, like let me play around with this and see if it gives me back something I hadn't thought of before, and obviously the AI is kind of randomized to some sense, and so it'll pop back something, and an artist could be like, oh, like I hadn't thought of this angle, or I hadn't thought of this specific lighting, so maybe I can incorporate that into my art. I can see that being helpful in certain cases. Again, I'm not really sure how I feel about it because again, you're you're stealing art, and I definitely see the laziness argument there. It's like instead of using your own creativity, you're basing it off of a someone else's stuff, but B, like you're just like an algorithm, right? It's randomized. It's not really, there wasn't like much thought put into that. So I definitely prefer if there's like no AI use during concept development, but this is kind of like the one area which for me personally is a bit more of a gray area. Again, like it shouldn't be used to like replace concept artists because concept artists are like really the bread and butter in many ways of film and like just storytelling. So definitely should not be used to replace it. But I could see like why certain concept artists might want to take some inspiration, if you will, from this stuff. But again, it's a gray area. I would rather it not be used at all. And so going back to this whole Supergirl thing, it's just like with how like with how much the space is against AI, it's like you really should not have like made this video. Again, this goes back to the Stranger Things behind the scenes from like like 6 or 7 months ago at this point. It's just like you guys like have tabs of Chat GPT open, and it's like, yeah, like whether or not it was actually used, like Stranger Things finale definitely felt like Chat GPT because that's how trash it was. So, and again, like for Lobo, like are we serious? Like, why wouldn't you just go back to like, comics like from years past of Lobo? There's been tons of fan art about him. Make your own like concept art. Like why like would we be using AI for a pretty like a pretty not that Lobo is like a bad design, but it's a pretty straightforward design. So there's I don't really know if there's like much more to say on this topic. It's kind of just it's cringe, and it just makes me upset because I was like one of the biggest people like hyped for this movie. Like I truly think that Supergirl has the potential to be like one of the best comic book characters ever. And I was one of those guys who was like, "Oh, like, Supergirl is just a copy of Superman, like she's like feminist trash or whatever." But as I actually like delved into the source material and actually like read more about the character, I really kind of felt inspired by her, and her origin is just like really deep and very complex and speaks to a lot of the human experience. And so to see the direction that this film went, with its poor marketing, with its just kind of mid, it just being a mid film, it's trash box office performance, and now this like potential AI garbage. It's just like it's just sad to see, and I don't really see this character like coming back in like a big way moving forward. Like everyone again has always kind of been like, oh, like Supergirl is like not this great character, let's stop wasting time on her. And this doesn't like help that at all. If anything, the studio might just like cancel like future Supergirl projects, which is like it sucks. But I would say the one kind of the big project that DC like as a whole is writing on right now is Man of Tomorrow next year. um Supergirl is gonna be in that. So if she's good in that movie, then that's really that'll potentially kind of cancel out like how bad this film was. Uh, but if it's not, then DC is really gonna be in a tough spot. Uh, Again, it's all kind of riding on Man of Tomorrow right now. If Man of Tomorrow like sucks, or it doesn't do well at the box office, then honestly, James Gunn, just pack it up. Just pack it up. You're cooked. And again, like this is not to say like this isn't like a Marvel versus DC thing, because in my opinion, at least creatively, I mean financially, I think Marvel is doing better and it's probably going to get back. But at least creatively, I have less interest in what Marvel is doing. I personally I don't think Doomsday or the Secret Wars reboot is gonna really like get them back on their feet. There's a few portions of Marvel stuff like during the street level stuff that I'm still kind of interested in, but Marvel as a whole, I've kind of just lost interest in, unfortunately. Um, Whereas DC, like I still have a lot of interest in, but it just again it really depends on like how Man of Tomorrow does, if James Gunn's studio is going to survive or not. And it's not looking too great right now, guys. It's not looking too great. But let me know like down below what you guys' thoughts on all this are. If there's any like concept artists out there who have like real say on like all of this. I would love to know your thoughts on this. I'm not a concept artist. I'm a drawer, or I'm an illustrator, I guess, and an animator. So I guess like there's like some crossover because I'm like independent, but I wouldn't consider myself a concept artist because that has like a very specific like connotation to it. It's a very like in depth and like complex field that I really like don't have like much say so on. I just wanted to give like my personal experience like with my concept art class, and you know just how I could potentially see AI being used, but again, it's like I would rather it not. It's a very weird gray area kind of thing. So again, let me know your thoughts on all this, and as always, may the force be with you.